Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come in, take your seats. We'll wait for a quorum to come together. We have our lists ready to go. I'm Rich Rushfield. We're here with Katey Rich, both of the Ankler. And how'd your list come along? How did this go?
Well, I put one in the newsletter that I published yesterday that I kind of took the coward's way out, I think, and gave it a theme. Because you look at this list and there's a lot of interesting ways that the Oscars overlap with this list, obviously. So I started thinking about the movies that either had Oscar nominations or had buzz in some way, but won no Oscars. So not even just that, there's a couple films on this list that didn't win Best Picture famously, but I went with they were in the hunt in some way and won no Oscars, and yet their legacy lives on to kind of prove that these things can shift over time. But I didn't make it. A lot of my heart choices are on that list, but not all of them. So I'm gonna do a real one for this because I think it's time to get brave and make my
Oh,
real
really?
list.
So I was prepared to retort your published list, but
Well, please do. I mean, those are all movies every single one of those movies would be on my top 10 in a given day. It's not all, but there's a couple things that I didn't put on there that I just could not in good conscience do a list without because they didn't fit my self-made criteria. So what would you retort that's on the list that I had in the newsletter?
Uh, gotta look at it, but let me take a look again. But
Okay.
the
I don't think there's a bad movie on that list. Let's be clear.
no, well, not a bad movie, but the question would be whether they belong on the list. I mean
Sure.
the basic problem
You
here
know,
is
I'm realizing I'm getting an echo where I'm hearing your voice late, and should I get
have
AirPods?
you might want AirPods.
Okay. Do you wanna vamp for a moment while I
I will. I
okay,
will.
I know
Uh,
people love this when we just vamp and have some dead air.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, this
okay.
is this is live video.
Yeah. Okay,
Getting
I'm gonna go
people goes
invisible
on in the
for a
kitchen here.
moment. I'll be
Yeah.
right back.
So I will just say, so my list was coming together uh, still as we went to airtime, and still may evolve in the course of this. I just right as we went live, I took a look at it and thought, oh my god, I left that film out. Well, which do I dump to make a place for it? So I think there were three or four that were kind of automatic, like kind of on my all-time top 50. So I had the rest of it, and then for the remaining seven spots, it was like a 100-way tie for those spots. So I'll tell you. So Katie, my what I decided, I was trying to sort of
I'm
balance
back.
the list. Like, you want a little foreign, you want a little domestic, you want to represent, you want to have all this stuff, and you don't want to do too many of this kind of movie, you don't want to. And I finally just decided, hell with all that. It's going to be the 10 movies that stay in my mind the most. And if it ends,
Yeah.
if that,
It's
and as it turns out, that is Fast and Furious 1 through 9. So who could have known? But no, just kidding.
list done. What a twist. No, because it's your list. It's it has to be what speaks to your heart. And I think if Julianne Moore hadn't spoken to herself and put Superbad on her list, maybe Superbad wouldn't have made this list of 100 that the New York Times published. And thank goodness she did. So I feel like you kind of have to speak for yourself and nobody else.
When I don't know how it was for you, making your wedding, your list of wedding guests, which you have to make some terrible choices when you do that. For those of you who were considering it, just, I will apprise you of the math. If you have 200 wedding, if you have a 200-seat wedding, which is a huge wedding, so that's 100 invitations because everybody gets a guest, and then divide it between you and your spouse and then the parents. So that's really 30 invitations you get. So just bear that in mind when you're
The way
planning.
I solved that was by having a huge wedding that was outdoors and therefore had no limited space.
Was there?
So I'm not good at choosing.
Wow, that's a good way. My the bar I made is, it had to be people that we have hung out with as a couple. That it couldn't.
I think
It
it's a good
it,
way to
it
do it.
wasn't going to be the greatest hits of every point in my life. Just be, and the parallel is that it has to be films that I've thought of in the last year. If it was a film that I really loved in 2003, but I really don't give it much thought, then I can't, in good conscience, give it a spot here. But films that I thought of, and all these are movies I've seen, many times, and stay with me, and probably have seen lately too. So.
Rewatching I'm not very good at. Like on this list of, what I want to propose, I'm not sure I've watched any of them in the last 3 years. This is partly because like cable, like picking up something on cable is not really a thing anymore where you just like watch 5 minutes of something. But I like all of these movies live in my mind constantly. So I feel good about that part of it.
Yeah, what's also hard is that there were directors that I really wanted to like, okay, this is one of my favorite directors, but do any of those, I mean, do any of those movies rise to the top? I mean, I was at an event last night, a tribute to Steven Spielberg at Universal, and just thinking of the number of great movies he's had in the 2000s, which include Minority Report, War of the Worlds, Munich, Bridge of Spies, West Side Story, all of which would be on my list, but none of which kind of made my top 10. So,
this is going to be my bugaboo. And on next week's Prestige Junkie podcast, Chris Rosen and I talked about War of the Worlds, which I don't think I would put on my personal list, but I argued in that podcast as maybe top 10 Spielberg because it's far underrated. Do you know how many Spielberg movies made the New York Times 100 list?
I'm going to guess that Munich made it. That Munich is the one that made it.
Minority Report is the one
interesting.
that made it. I mean, the way that AI has really been reclaimed in critical acclaim in the past decade, I was shocked that AI did not make that list.
Yeah. I asked him for his list at the thing last night.
Did you really?
I did. I said,
you put this poor man on the spot. This man who's worked with so many people. You're going to have to make him on the top of his head do this list.
Well, he was pretty good at evading my refused to answer. Said people ask him to do his best list all the time, and he never does that. Probably because he's friends with every director that would possibly be. So that kind of ruins it. Anyway, should we? I guess we'll roll out our lists one by one.
Do you want the quiz I prepared for you first, or do you want to do that after?
Okay. Well, you.
So looking over the main New York Times list, I was kind of, you see some directors pop up over again, and you start thinking like, oh yes, there's some actors who've had like a big role in all of these movies over the past decade. Can you name what would you throw out for the 10 directors who have the most frequent sightings on this list? How many of them can you name, and who do you think is the most?
Oh boy. I mean, the Tarantino movies. I mean, he only has like 4 movies, and but they seem to pop up a lot.
He has 3 on this list. Yeah, he has 3. Yep. He's on the top 10.
The Coen brothers also seem to pop up a lot.
Yep. Coen's have 4.
Is there someone bigger than 4 is a lot? Is that there's someone?
Yeah, so the Coens have 4, as do 2 other directors, and then there's one director who has 5.
Interesting. Gosh, who's the 5? I'm give it to me. I can't.
5 is Christopher Nolan has 5 movies.
Christopher Nolan, yeah, I forget about it.
Let's see, it's yeah. Which, yes, I mean, I think that tracks. And so the ones with 4, in addition to the Coens, is Alfonso Cuarón, who really did well for himself, and Paul Thomas Anderson, who I think you would expect to be all over the place.
My list contains 0 Christopher Nolan movies, and there's one Paul Thomas Anderson movie that is fighting for a spot, even as we go to press here. I'm
sitting here looking at my list with no Christopher Nolan movies and thinking, can that be right? And I may change my mind. And change it before we're done.
I'll go so far as to say my long list contains no Christopher Nolan movies. So that's
okay. Oh, then we are in different places there. Would you like there? Okay, hey, one more thing. There's one actor who far and away has the most movies on the list. I'll give you a hint. He is starring in a major film that is in theaters now. Would you like to guess who that is?
Tom Cruise,
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Oh, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in
Once upon a time in America, once upon a time in Hollywood, once what
Inglourious Bastards, Moneyball. I'm gonna blank on the other three, but yeah. Oh, Ocean's 11 is on there. But yeah, I mean, Brad Pitt's worked with a lot of. A Tree of Life's probably on there. He's worked with a lot of good directors.
By the way, if you're joining us, send in your own picks, send in your comments, retorts. Let's mix it up here.
Yeah.
You do not have to accept Katey and my list as binding or final.
Please don't. God.
Yeah.
My list is not binding to me.
I do feel pretty good that my list is not just my list, that this actually is the 10 best movies of the millennium so far. So it is fairly binding.
You think that yours is legally binding? Okay.
But you're allowed to dissent, even though you're wrong.
We still live in a democracy for now.
Yeah. So let's start off. Give us your first entry on the list.
All right, I'll try and go with the ones, because I did not do these in any order. Making a top 10 is beyond me, but I'll stick with a couple that were on the other lists that I put together. It would be Lady Bird. Is a girl with her debut feature, but her big breakout feature, deeply meaningful to me. I mean, I'm almost exactly the same age as Greta Gerwig, so there's a real nostalgia factor at play, but I just think it's one of those like gem perfect movies. And I would not want to have gone through the last, 8 years without it. So Lady Bird was a very easy, very obvious pick for me.
That's a fine movie. Didn't make my list, but I don't object to it. I won't veto it. Okay,
I appreciate it.
No, that's a beautiful movie that I think will live on and be enjoyed beyond it. I will say one caveat. I would say, so if you took the list of the top 25 years and it went against the list of the 90s or the 70s, almost none of these films would make it to the top 10. So
yeah. There's a couple of these for me. I mean, I was in high school at the beginning of this century, so I do think there's some essential coming of age movies for me in here that may not be quite the same for you.
No, I was in retirement home when when in 2000 and only to be resuscitated out of cryogenic freezing to do this video. Okay, my first pick is it is my favorite movie by these directors, and when I watched, think about A Serious Man by the Coen brothers, which
great movie,
is hilarious and profound, and the retelling of the Book of Job by the Coens, and so many great performances, so many hilarious things, and I considered Inside Llewellyn Davis, which that's my favorite Coen brothers period, the kind of Serious Man,
the post-Oscar period.
I like those movies way more than I like No Country for Old Men or Fargo.
Did you try to limit yourself to one Coen? Did you keep it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it happened naturally, but A Serious Man was the clear contender for me. So there's my first. Okay, what's your next choice here?
Okay, my next one also made the New York Times list. Also an Oscar movie that didn't get its due at The Wolf of Wall Street. I think that is clearly the best Scorsese movie of the century. And it was the top ranked on the New York Times list. I think The Departed also made the cut. I mean, he's made incredible movies in his 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like what the career this man has had. But I just think Wolf of Wall Street is. I think I've said, ask me on a day and I'll pick that as my favorite Scorsese period, but I could also go for Goodfellas or Age of Innocence.
That would be your favorite Scorsese period?
Yeah.
Wow.
It might, not my favorite Scorsese period, but Oh, you're like a favorite of all the Scorsese's? Yeah, because I watched all of them relatively. That's a rewatch I did in the last couple of years, and I just movie is all of the things he does so well. It's Leonardo DiCaprio's best performance ever. Gonna be.
A powerful movie that I mean, Scorsese for me is like it's with Spielberg. Like I have a lot of his movies on my long list, but
Yeah,
none of them rose to the top the top. So if this were the Oscars, I you'd pick one of them to get to like to say okay, he's earned his spot. But
yeah,
this
yeah.
isn't the Oscars. This is a brutal world top 10, the top 10. Um, my next film, and I'm looking up the year of it as we is it is a it comes to us from the nation of Sweden. Can you guess what it is?
Uh, the worst person in the world? No, that's Norway.
It is not
Uh,
that's actually on my long list also, but not it's from the year 2000, the beginning of the century, Together by Lucas
oh, Lucas
uh,
Moodysson. Yeah,
Moodysson, about a Swedish commune in the 70s, and it's set in 1975. It's a really beautiful, uh, uh, terrific movie, and just gets at all these personal dynamics and the politics of the era and all that, and that's one I watch over and over. I interviewed Jason Reitman last year. I think he said that's his favorite movie also. So so
that is one I have not seen. That one that is in the period of me becoming a cinephile, where there's one that was on the New York Times list, from I think also from 2000 that I've never seen. Um, I tabulated it up, and on the New York Times list, there's 8 that I hadn't seen. Together wasn't on there, but I'm going to add it to the list. I'll make it 9.
the all right the well go see Together. They interestingly, he just did a sequel to it 2 years ago, which given that it's one of my favorite movies, it's odd that I haven't watched it.
Yeah,
But I should. It didn't uh that was still the period when a exciting fresh foreign film got everybody went to see it, and it got lots of excitement and attention,
yeah,
and that doesn't happen very much anymore.
a, a good era for the art house for sure.
Yeah, yeah. All right, what's your next pick?
Okay, another one that was on my had Oscar attention but didn't quite get there. The Royal Tenenbaums. For me, Wes Anderson has made a lot of great movies. This movie and Grand Budapest Hotel both made the New York Times list, which I think is a great pick. But this is the one that, like, I think of quotes from it all the time. I think of those characters all the time. I saw it at a very pivotal time, and like kind of understanding what movies could do. I think it's pretty flawless, and so emblematic of what he can do. And I'm thinking of Spanish no matter what. I don't want him to change his little like story box way of making movies, but I don't know that it'll ever get better than this one.
The perhaps Gene Hackman's greatest comic performance also in that movie.
Oh
The
yeah.
the
Well, I
the
did just rewatch The Birdcage recently in a crowd, and Gene Hackman is so incredibly funny in The Birdcage in a role that shouldn't be funny at all. But I'd give it to Royal Tenenbaum probably.
so there's I would say my favorite Wes Anderson period is the only period I truly embrace without reservations is this period which I credit largely to his first 4 films were co-written with Owen Wilson, and
Yeah.
this was the last film he and Owen Wilson wrote together, and one wonders how much Owen Wilson was the genius of all these.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I love Grand Budapest also, and I think that movie is in some ways like broader and about more than Royal Tenenbaums. But the like sadness, the really intimate character based sadness of
yeah.
Royal Tenenbaums, I just think is so powerful.
The I just with the things after this period, I just the my quirky capacity is really low. It's and
It's fair.
he tends to exhaust it in the first 15 minutes of every movie. So I recognize something about them, but I just I have personal tolerance issues.
That's fair.
So my next one, we just mentioned Jason Reitman, is a movie by Jason Reitman that much overlooked, but my favorite movie by him, and and this was one that was easily made the bar, cleared the bar. Young Adult, starring Charlize
Oh,
Theron.
wow, that's a great movie. Great
I,
movie.
I love that movie so much. I think the most important theme of for for cinema and the arts in general is the difficulty of Gen X in aging, and what we face as a generation that was you know cooler than any other generation, but then has to face a life where coolness, we come to a place where coolness doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
like it used to. And Young Adult gets that great performance by Patton Oswalt also in that.
Mm-hmm.
I just love this movie. I've watched it over. Charlize Theron's performance in it is so good, and it's see that over. Also, great performance by Patrick Wilson. It's a perfect movie, and anyone who hasn't seen it, which is probably a lot of people watching,
Yeah.
should go watch it right away. Earl
Yeah,
Brownlee agrees. Thank you, Earl.
Jason Reitman did not make it onto the New York Times list, and like, that just doesn't surprise me. He's not like a cool filmmaker these days, although I think the list is like pretty mainstream compared to what you get with like the Sight and Sound list. But Juno, Up in the Air, Young Adult, I really like Tully a lot. Like, there's a lot of decent Reitman movies you could make the case for.
I interviewed him last year, so I rewatched the oeuvre, and uh, unlike many directors, I mean, his movies really hold up. Like the Juno, if anything, has gotten better with the. I mean, that's a nearly perfect film, also, and even its first film,
Oh yeah.
Thank You for Smoking, is a terrific uh, film. Up in the Air is really interesting and speaks his time a lot. So
Yep.
a lot of great films there. Uh, what's next for you?
Yeah. So I went back and there's a couple filmmakers who I love who did not make it on the New York Times list, and I think is maybe because they just didn't have an obvious one to pick. And I sat here for a while thinking about Kelly Reichardt movies, and because she's one of my favorite filmmakers, she's made a lot of great movies. Her entire career is in the 21st century, so it's pretty much picking from all of it. And I had Meeks cut off on this list for a long time, but then when you're talking about movies you still think about and have revisited, I think First Cow has been a little stickier for me. That movie came out in 2020. It opened in theaters in like March 1st or something, and got buried by the pandemic, obviously, but there was kind of this flicker of hope that like maybe in a year of movies First Cow can have a chance, and John Magaro was kind of making all these long lists for best actor. It didn't pan out. Kelly Reichardt movies are kind of not built for Oscar season, and I think that's okay, but this is just such a wonderful like spin on a Western and about like life on a frontier. I love Westerns. I love movies about like building society, and this kind of idea of like living in Oregon when there is one cow in the entire state of Oregon, and these guys figure out a way to steal its milk and make food that makes everyone happy. Like there's a joy to it, which isn't always part of Kelly Reichardt movies. But I love this movie. I think the central performances are terrific, and I thought about it a lot as you were saying, so I wanted it on here.
Great director. Uh, didn't make my top 10, but certainly deserving. And really just uh, the directors that retain that humanist element and ability in this time are worth celebrating as society slides
Yeah.
away from humanity. All that. So. uh, No, too great. That I won't veto that pick there. So
Thank you.
um my next one I didn't see on anyone's list. Got a lot of attention when it came out, but seems to have faded. But not for me. It's a German film from 2008. The Der Bader Meinhof complex.
Oh
Translates to
wow.
the bottom, which is what is it, like 3 hours long depiction of the Bader Meinhof gang that was a from the sort of left wing terrorist group that really held the entire nation, Germany, hostage, and the lots of ways for years and years, and it's a it it is kind of it's almost like a verite, uh, telling that there's kind of no explanation of why these characters got to be that where they are, but just sort of takes you into the life of this gang and all that they've done, and just and really shows you the mania of that time. And it's an incredible, gripping movie. I think about all the time. Everyone should see it. Didn't make anyone else's list though.
Did you expect it to be on the New York Times list, or does it?
Well, no,
Because
I mean,
I've heard of that movie, but it's not as a like its legacy has not lived on in quite the same way. It feels like.
yeah, I don't. It really has sort of been forgotten. I don't know. I mean, it's long. It's German. It's kind of topical. But
I mean, Tony Erdmann's on this list, and it's long in German.
yeah, I mean, it's not. There's no sort of. There's kind of no characters in it. It has this very verite sense. So there's not performances or characters or relationships to latch onto. So it's the director, I think, has only made one movie since then. So he's not Uli Edel. So he's not sort of in circulation there. So I don't understand why it's totally disappeared, but it was a huge sensation when it came out. And has
Yeah, I remember it.
within art house world, but has faded since then. Go figure. But
Yeah, that's what
now
happens. I mean, it's interesting. This 25-year span is interesting because it's periods that we remember, and we can be like, "Oh yeah, that was like," realizing that things have changed over the last 25 years, which is not always easy to wrap your head around. Has been an interesting part of this.
you what's next for you?
All right, next is I think the only one of these that I would, without hesitation, put on lists of films of all time that felt like such an obvious one for me, and it's Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. The most romantic movie ever made, the most beautifully made, like the production design, the costumes, the score, the like vibe of aching longing. I mean, Wong Kar-wai is one of those kind of undisputed international auteurs. I have certainly not seen all of his films, but a lot of them are like very human scaled, which I was saying about something else. And this one is just like the absolute best unrequited love story ever, as far as I'm concerned. And it was the submission for the international Oscar that year, and I think didn't even get nominated. So it has this kind of overlooked quality in its time. But certainly I don't think I saw it when it was in theaters, but very soon after it came out, it was pretty much regarded as a masterpiece, which I think it absolutely still is. I think on the Times list, it ranked pretty high, maybe in the top 10. So, I think its reputation has stuck with it. And yeah, it's just one of the best films ever.
Yeah, no, that was one of the ones that's on the bubble for my top 10. It's not before this video video is over. It might make it back up there again, but it's not currently on there But it's in a real small group, and that I mean, it's definitely gone down as Wong Kar-wai's great work. It's funny
Yeah,
that
I think so.
he hasn't done a movie since then that has kind of rivaled that level of acclaim.
No,
It's
his
interesting.
Fallout 2046 is like sort of set in the same world and was pretty out there. And My Blueberry Nights was kind of regarded as a flop. It's been interesting, but for a purpose of a list like this, where they're like you're a great director and you have one obvious masterpiece that everyone can vote for, it's number 4 on the New York Times list. So clearly, people got the memo.
Certainly a masterpiece. Could easily have made my list, but it didn't. So too bad for it. And for my next one, I return again to the nation of Sweden for a list that actually was on a lot of people's for which one that actually was on a lot of people's lists. It's Let the Right One In,
Oh yeah,
by Thomas Alfredson, a Swedish movie about a child vampire, which some of those memorable sequences and like the greatest air of creepiness that any film I know versus that. I interviewed Thomas Alfredson once, and he said with all his movies he starts with the smell. And we were talking
Whoa.
about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He said he wanted the movie to smell like wet wool, and let the right one in should smell like snow. And
I've got a wet wool movie on my list coming up, so you can tell me if you agree.
yeah, but it does smell like snow, and it is the chilliest of movies, and it's a really amazing. There, it's the only horror film that made my list, and there's a bunch of others that could have. I think the early 2000s, especially, there were a lot of really good, interesting horror films.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's been an interesting century for horror. I would agree.
yeah, the Descent. That's another one that could have been on my list, but wasn't. But let the right where did let what the right one end up on the New York Times?
It's in the 90s, I think, or like high up, but that's still a pretty good spot to be in for a Swedish
Should be higher.
kid vampire movie. Well, hang on, no, not in the 80s. It's ranking above Fellowship of the Ring and Anchorman, so it's doing pretty well. Hang on, I'm gonna keep. If you want me to keep scrolling, I will get to it eventually.
That's a,
Can I search? This is a very beautifully produced. Oh, it's number 70. So
okay.
sandwiched in between Ocean's 11 and Under the Skin. What a combo.
Yeah. All right. What's next for you?
Okay, so now I diverge from the list that I published of movies that had
Oh,
Oscar attention but didn't win anything because everything after this point does have at least one Oscar. I mean, I could make my like more obscure hip movie lists, but I have to be true to myself, and my taste will overlap in certain ways. But this one is probably not what anyone is expecting, and honestly, like I might go back and not put this on my list, especially because there's another big movie from 2009 that I also love. But I put Star Trek, the 2009 J.J. Abrams film,
mm.
on my list of 10. I
Wow.
love
Wow.
this movie. I have loved this movie since it opened in 2009. I had kind of like done a project and like caught up on Star Trek, which I had never been a fan of, for the job I had many jobs ago. And I was just so dazzled by this movie from the beginning with Chris Hemsworth, who's playing Kirk's dad as he goes down with the ship. I think it's so well cast. It's such a great combination of young actors at this perfect time. It's this great use of J.J. Abrams' kind of like slick visuals, optimism that he like can bring to movies to lesser success in some ways. But I think he was so well suited to Star Trek. It was such a great like summer for movies. It came out the same month as Up, which did make the New York Times 100. It just like
Mm.
felt like this fun, promising time for big movies that we've lost in some ways. And I maybe should have put Avatar in here. That is certainly a movie that I have revisited more. I went to the
Mm.
Avatar World in Disney World earlier this year, but I wanted it before I went out for Star Trek because I do think it's such a special movie that is fairly being overlooked, but I don't think deserves it.
The fate of crowd pleasers and genre movies. What was amazing to me about that is how Chris Pine and Zachary Pinto, particular, how they took these sort of famous performances and they kind of went. They didn't just say, "Okay, forget them. We're going to do our own thing." They kind of went to. He kind of Chris Pine, like he sat like Captain Kirk, like he knew he like did,
Yeah,
but yet he did Shatner, but he then made it totally his own character. Like it wasn't just it was sort of started with Shatner and then took it to become a real character from there. That was
yeah.
uh, just really interesting performances there.
Yeah,
So
in this world where we're just stuck with IP, that's a good way to make IP that just feels like it's something, even if it's in a world that already exists. It's not impossible, and J.J. Abrams struggled to do it with Star Wars, but did it so well here.
yeah, so I won't begrudge you that. Had you put
Okay, I appreciate it.
uh had you put Avatar on here, this might have gotten ugly. So uh the so thank you
Embrace
for
Avatar. It's allow the joy to come through.
Yeah. Um, okay, my next film, which I think made a fair number of people's lists I saw around there, from 2001 and one, back to the beginning of the millennium. Baz Luhrmann took us to the Moulin Rouge, which was
Yeah.
one of the most kind of inventive and wild and just engrossing, and those two performances of Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor just fantastic, and the use of music in that and drama recreating this world. It was fantastic. That is a movie I think of and come back to all the time, and as a was a that one was an easy choice for this list for me.
Yeah, and that's not on my list, and it kinda breaks my heart that it's not. I love that movie so much. It's not on the New York Times 100 list, which shocks me. Like, that feels like a weird, like, we all need to get our heads straight and remember the early part of the century
So
because Moulin
that
Rouge is
didn't make
a
that
huge
didn't.
movie. It's not on there. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
That
And, like, maybe it's because Baz Luhrmann made Elvis and everyone thought it was goofy, and so it's, like, tainted the reputation of Moulin Rouge. I don't know, that movie is tremendous.
I tell you, I almost Elvis is on my long list here.
I'm
I'm
a big
not.
fan of Elvis.
I'm pro Boz in just about everything he does, and I think Elvis was a great movie too. So,
I would
uh,
not have put Australia on my list, but I'm a defender of Australia. Like, I think it's more interesting
yeah,
than we give it credit for. So, yeah, I
I
mean, having a list of the 21st century without Boz on it, I think is a huge mistake.
yeah, I think and I think Moulin Rouge is his greatest film. So,
I agree.
happy happy for that to have a place. Warning: after this, my list starts to go to some weird places.
Oh, it
Yeah,
isn't. It
yeah.
hasn't already gotten weird.
No, it's
Okay.
going to get a lot crazier.
Mine's getting more normie as it goes on. So, we'll diverge from there. We'll balance each other out.
okay. What's next for you?
Okay, this one is another one that was an obvious, couldn't have done it without it, and, is on the New York Times list as well. It's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Is a Oscar winner for Best Original Screenplay. What a fantastic win that is. That yeah, it made it number 7 on the New York Times list. So it's again like a story about like unrequited love and longing, which I'm obviously a real sucker for. And it's so visually inventive. It's such a perfect marriage of Charlie Kaufman and Michel Gondry as the writer director. Like it's just and Jim Carrey's best before he's really great in the Truman Show too. So I don't want to diminish that, but I just saw it at the perfect time in my life. It has lingered with me. It just feels like for people of my specific age, I think it's kind of like a shared language in a lot of ways. And I think if you ever go through a breakup and don't watch this movie, like you're doing yourself a disservice. It's an important guide to life, I think.
A comment from Darren Okada. Boz infused visual storytelling and music in a new style, and it's not digitally assembled, but cut negative for prints. Thank you for acknowledging that. Everything. Uh, Eternal Sunshine is great. Definitely on my long list here. Um, it's funny when it in 2010, when there were a lot of best films of the decade list, Eternal Sunshine sort of swept that, was the clear number one. It followed by
Oh, interesting.
There Will Be Blood was kind of a distant second, but was
Mhm.
definitely second. But Eternal Sunshine was was sort of massively considered the best film of that of the decade then, and I so I think it's kind of its stock has sort of fallen a bit since then. I don't think it's been forgotten, but it's not. It's kind of fallen out of the Mount Rushmore level since then. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it is so great that we take it for granted in some ways. It got a lot of attention at its time, so it's not like, if you want to put Yee as your like movie from the 2000s to promote, like that's something that fewer people have seen. So I don't blame people for that, but I think it just tells you how things ebb and flow, and like in 20 years we might celebrate it in a different way.
Amazingly, I assumed that both our lists were going to be all Kirsten Dunst films, but that's the first Kirsten Dunst appearance on either of our lists here.
That's
So
true. And
uh,
I really like Marie Antoinette, and it wouldn't have been. It's just not my like personal heart movie, so I didn't put it on there. But uh, I think Kirsten Dunst is very important. I guess Melancholia made the New York Times list, so she had her representation
yeah,
that way.
I'll just tease not it this that won't be the last we see of her today. So
Okay,
more is
all
coming.
right,
So
bring it on. I look
yeah,
forward to it.
but good to have the first one. So my next one was not actually a theatrical release. It was a COVID release. It should have been theatrical release. And uh, I kind of stopped to think of what was the funniest film of the last 20 years, of this period, which has not been a period, especially lately, known for comedy. Not when the
No,
Step Brothers was a strong contender for this spot for the best comedy spot, but ultimately it went to what I think is the pound for pound, the funniest, most original creative film of the period. Bar and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which
yeah,
if you
that's a great pick.
if you haven't seen, watch it immediately. It is so funny and so inventive and just kind of amazes you in every like you just start watching it like, wow, how did this happen? This is incredible. And the performances are great. The music is great. The directing by Josh Greenbaum, who also did another contender, Strays, another contender for funniest film of the decade, and as well as the Will and Harper, the great
Yeah.
documentary. Um, but such hilarious and beautiful and just inspiring movie on every level, and one I'm sure I'll be watching and thinking about for the rest of my life.
I need to see that movie in a theater someday, and I think it has back in rep screenings because it did come out when everything was still in full lockdown. I'm not sure any theaters were open then, and it felt like this
No,
kind of like primal scream of insanity that everyone was experiencing at that point. And I think being able to go back and see it in a theater now would be very cathartic. It might heal something that broke in us during the pandemic.
they just did a screening of it at at the American Cinematheque here. I didn't go to
Yeah,
it, but friends that went to it said it played incredibly well on the big screen. And
yeah,
I've never seen it on the big screen myself, so I still love it.
yeah. No, I think we gotta go. We gotta host an Ankler screening next.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's next for you?
Okay, now we're getting into a double feature of movies that almost won Best Picture and should have. And the first one is The Social Network, ranked high on the New York Times list as well. I think it's at number 10. It feels like a real obvious choice, but the one that you just can't avoid. It is a movie I think about all of the time. It's not just because it's like quotable because of Aaron Sorkin and you think about like fuck you flip flops and everything else that Andrew Garfield says, but it just has so much to say about like friendships and money and ambition and how all those things can corrode each other. And I think the more we learn about Mark Zuckerberg, like it's made in this fascinating time when Mark Zuckerberg was kind of like a shitty guy who'd made a product that everyone liked and we kind of felt like we had to deal with it. And now that he's gone on to do a lot of genuinely world ruining things, like
Yeah.
the movie only feels more and more relevant, even though it's kind of nicer to him than I think that it would be now. And I guess Aaron Sorkin's working on a sequel, so bring it on. I'd love to see it. But I'm not sure it would be as like weirdly tender as The Social Network is. Like the way that it treats this friendship between Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin as this like thing that they lost because of who they fundamentally are and because of capitalism and all these other things. It's such a great movie. It lost Best Picture to The King's Speech. I remember vividly thinking it would pull it out, and it didn't. And I just think, no offense to The King's Speech, it was a movie I liked just fine. But I just think it was really clear at the moment, and has only become clearer since that was the movie of 2010.
Yeah, it's a movie. Uh, it's funny because when it came out, we sort of knew Facebook, but we hadn't seen very much of Mark Zuckerberg, and he had been kind of reclusive in the public eye, so you just kind of knew him by reputation. And then after this came out, sort of, I think in response to this, he started appearing more, and you felt like, oh, well, that's not what he's like. He's a kind of normal seeming guy. And then as time's gone on, you've said, oh no, that's exactly what he's like. That's they, they,
Yeah, pretty
they
much.
no, they nailed that completely, and they nailed the entire era completely. So
Yeah.
it's funny. It's I think it's come full circle, and it was I think at the time I appreciated the movie, but I felt like, well, it's a little harsh. Maybe it's not getting, maybe not understanding it, but now I see it understood better than I did.
It's not harsh enough. Yeah.
But no, I mean,
It's also so funny. Like, it's a very, very funny movie, and I think it
yeah.
gets underappreciated for that.
I mean, great performance by Jesse Eisenberg also. But
Yeah.
I think that gets lost because there are so many Finchers that are that qualified. It's sort of everybody has their favorite David Fincher. So and maybe Zodiac is such kind of a film nerd totem that it pushes Social Network down the list. I would say
I think was Social Network on the New York Times list, and Social Network beat out Zodiac. So I think, this was a kind of a populist list. It's a lot of like actors and people who aren't like film scholars. So I think it tipped the balance there.
Yeah. So my next film is the one documentary on my list. There are a bunch of documentaries on the long list, but this is the one that made it. It is Cobain: Montage of Heck by Brett Morgan, by filmmaker, which is as I said earlier, the most important question for the arts to grapple with is the aging of Gen X and what this generation has gone through, and probably no film captures that as starkly and sort of imaginably and beautifully as this film does. That really just creates a whole world out of the Nirvana soundscape, and it is incredibly dark. This is not a uplifting film. It is a very dark message of like sort of where he came from and the upbringing and how it ill-equipped him for fame in the modern world, and it's totally engrossing, and the story of my people. So
I feel like this is your you let me have Lady Bird and I'm letting you have this is our generational
I like Lady Bird though. I'm not should we say we each get to veto one thing from the other person's list?
No, I don't know. I'm not going to take your list away from you. It belongs to you.
I think you have the right to. Anyway, if you haven't seen Cobain: Montage of Heck, go check it out. It's really gripping movie, but not not a fun romp. You should be forever.
Sure.
All right. What's next for you? Coming to the bottom.
Okay, here's where I get on my soapbox, because we were talking about how there's really one Spielberg on this list, and I am just genuinely outraged that Lincoln got, as far as I can tell from this list someone put together, 2 votes from Nathan Lane and Rachel Zegler to be included on their list of the top 100, which, like, God bless them. But I think Lincoln
and Rachel Zegler is
such a fantastic movie. She is. I mean, they were not. Look, Amy Pascal picked plenty of movies that she produced to herself on that list, so no one was told they could not have conflicts of interest. Such a wonderful movie in this deep story about this figure. We all assume that we really well. Daniel Day-Lewis won his 3rd Oscar. 30 supporting players, and every single one of them is perfect and gets a moment to shine. Like, James Spader playing this ne'er do well who's trying to whip votes. It's about the like messy process of democracy. It really is as much of an Obama era relic as Hamilton is, and I don't think gets the same amount of attention as being like, look, the government is hard, but it's worth doing, and people can put their heads together and overcome their differences and compromise and make something worthwhile happen. And that idea is so foreign now, but I think that movie captures so much of like, I mean, generally, like what America can be, which I think a lot of Spielberg movies have aimed for. I think War of the Worlds has elements of that too. But it's so optimistic and lovely. And the way that it treats Lincoln as this guy who's trying to hold it together, like Daniel Day-Lewis's performance was like genuinely revelatory. It changed the way that we think of this totemic American figure as this like soft-spoken guy who like wants to like take a nap and think about his children. And I love this movie ever since 2012. It lost the Best Picture to Argo. I think everyone knew it was going to happen, but I think it's such a huge movie. It has rewarded all of my rewatches, and to me, it is. I think it's hard to pick Spielberg's, and that's possibly why only Minority Report makes that list. But I just think Lincoln is such an easy pick for so much of what Lincoln, what Spielberg in his like historical drama mode, not action mode, of what he does so well, better than anybody.
Yeah, I mean that it's on my long list. You know, Daniel Day-Lewis is incredible, but undersold about Spielberg because they tend to not be showy is like how many great performances and great actors he's worked with, and how many great. I mean, you don't think of him as an actor's director because he does all these big set pieces, but I mean, a performance like that and that you build a film around is an amazing thing. We're gonna have a
Yeah,
gonna have another Daniel Day-Lewis performance this fall. What are the
it's
his first
true.
film
And Anemone
since
and his son's movie. Yeah.
first film since Phantom Thread 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a Daniel Day-Lewis performance really is an event. It's they're
Absolutely.
such a extraordinary. I went back. I watched his early ones, the Jim Sheridan ones, and they're so my left foot. He's just incredible from the start. And this
I
is this.
watched My Beautiful Laundrette for the first time a couple years ago. Like, what a performance. He is young and gorgeous and funny, and like
Hmm.
what he was, it was like discovering Daniel Day-Lewis all over again. It was amazing.
Um, and I think in Lincoln he found like the mid 19th century accent from like that section of Illinois to
Amazing.
I mean uh, he does his homework that fella. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I have 7 minutes left. I have to get on a phone call at
okay,
2. So these very nice
yeah,
people are
all right,
watching us. We should probably wrap it
thank you. Okay, my next pick from the beginning of the century, right, the very beginning, Ghost World
Oh,
by
what a good
Terence
pick.
is just one of the great all-time coming-of-age movies. Thor with Scarlett Johansson and Thor Birch are so good at that. Steve Buscemi, it's just it's weird and touching and not too quirky, just a little quirky, well under my capacity.
Under your threshold.
Yeah, I 25 years later, I still think about the movie all the time. I love it. And uh, uh, was an easy one for me on this. And
Um,
a
so
shame that Thora
yeah,
Birch kind of disappeared after that.
yeah, I hope she's having a good, peaceful life outside of all this. I have not seen Ghost World since I was the age of those characters, and I would very much like to revisit it. I'm sure I would get a lot more out of it this time.
Oh, and a great Brad Renfro, the late Brad Renfro, great performance by him also.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
all right, your final pick, Katie. Get you out the door.
All right. So for my final pick, as my memory goes, and you can let me confirm this, is back in 2007, you had to choose between There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men. Like it was a personality test. I was convinced that only one of them would manage to get nominated for Best Picture. It turns out both of them did, which means that the Academy was smarter than me at that point. I really struggled to choose between both of them at the time. I struggled to now, but in the end, I went with No Country for Old Men. That is my Coen's pick from the 21st century. I love the starkness of that movie. Again, I talk about directors of actors. Every performance in that movie is completely perfect. The fable nature of it, or kind of like a biblical story. I mean, we talked about that with The Serious Man, but there's so much of that in No Country for Old Men about fate and just evil that exists in the world. And, they've done it in comic ways with Raising Arizona and Anton Chigurh as just an all-time movie villain because of how incredibly seriously they take it. So I love that movie. It was a fantastic Best Picture winner at the time. And There Will Be Blood and No Country both made the top 10 in the New York Times. So clearly we've learned to just embrace them both.
I
But
don't know why.
I just think No Country by a Nose kind of becomes mine.
Yeah, I remember in 1997 or something, you had there was Election or American Beauty, and you can only like one of those, and those were very different movies, and
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like you should be allowed to like both of those, No Country and There Will Be Blood. That
Oh, you
they're both.
certainly. I mean, these are very similar, right? Like as like westerns about ambition and men and all of that stuff. Like they
Yeah,
have a lot in common, but that's what's
both
really interesting.
both very very dark. A lot of films, by the way. I
Yeah,
look at the list. A lot of like the bleak cinema was really heavy during this.
I know.
There are a lot of really dark
I know.
movies here, but the yeah, it's definitely a serious contender. There Will Be Blood for me. Previewing my final choice. Uh, it's like sort of like a Beatles album that you've heard so many times that like you're just never gonna play it again
Mm.
because it's just like lives in like every note of it lives perfectly in its head. So I couldn't even vote for it in the top 10 because it's just kind of like it's just sort of become the landscape for me more than a film that stands on its
See,
own.
that's a reason to vote for it. I think it's like a building block of your personality. That's a big thing.
It should be, but it's just like I, I I can't even like kind of focus on it to like look at like okay what is good about this or what it because it's just like it's such a it it, it it's such a basic period. So my final film, and this is actually the best film of the century so far. It's the number
Okay.
one pick. It's a Kirsten Dunst film, of course. Melancholia is the best film
Ah, I
of
figured that's where you were
this.
headed.
Yeah, an incredible movie. Works on many levels, and yeah, we're talking about bleak cinema, and
Seriously.
I think there's a good contender for chronic bleakness here. Um, Lars von Trier's greatest film certainly, and it's just it's kind of epic but intimate, and I can't count the number of times I've seen it, but I will see it many more, and I'm proud to name it the best film of the 21st century.
She's amazing in that movie. I have not seen it since 2013 or whatever was the year that it came out, but I think that's a great pick for best movie. It did make the New York Times list, so
What number?
there's enough other correct people.
Yeah,
What number? I closed the tab, so now I got to look it up again.
it's come back because I think that its reputation after it I think it got nominated for nothing when it came out, and she got nominated for nothing, and it was sort of decided it's kind of been creeping its way back. I think the young film kids have rediscovered it,
Yeah,
and it's like a letterbox prize there. So
yeah, that's the impression that I'm getting. Neither of us included the number one movie, Parasite, which I think that's an amazing.
yeah, I I will say very few of my films are Best Picture winners, and very few are even Best Picture nominees. And certainly, you look back at the first.
You make your own canon.
But you look back at the first 10 years of the decade in particular, it improves a bit after that, but their nominations do not hold up very well. There's some there's some really lousy.
They're getting better and better.
I mean, you look at these years where it's like a fight between like Quills and Kinsey, and like you're just like, what?
Yeah,
where were you people?
There were some rough times.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay, I have to go and be on a different call with our Angler colleague. But thank you for having me for this. This was very fun.
Great list. Great working with you. And well, I guess we'll see you in 2050. We'll do the next installment.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be sitting around until then. We will not speak between now and then, so we don't bias our choices.
All right. Update your contact information as we go along. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.